Right. I can only do one thing at a time. And if I read a script, I have to take my mask off so my glasses don't fog up. And if I put my mask on, I take my glasses off so I can't see you. So we shall cope. Can I say, please do sit down for the moment. Oh. Somewhere I have a script. So, Lord Mayor's Consort, Sheriff's Consort, members of council, welcome to the annual meeting of City of York Council. And before we start the formal proceedings, I would just like to make some acknowledgement. We regularly stand to remember members of council, past or present, who have deceased during the time between our last meeting. I don't think we have ever done it before for an officer or a former officer of the council. But I want us to today stand and have a moment's silence to acknowledge Patrick Scott, who was, I think, skipping one or two temporary appointments, was the second serving Director of Education and later Children's Services for this council. He did sterling work until he retired, and even after his retirement, he continued to serve this city, notably by working very hard with the York Music Hub until he died, very sadly, earlier this year. And I would like us to formally acknowledge his passing and the service he did to the city and to our schools. So could we stand for a moment for Patrick? Thank you very much. We shall now move on to the formal ceremony for the election of Lord Mayor, and Councillor Runciman will now propose a motion for the nomination of the Lord Mayor. Councillor Runciman.
Lord Mayor, Lady Mayoress, Sheriff, Sheriff Consort, members of council, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I think this is the 23rd Lord Mayor's Day that I have attended, and it is certainly the most unusual. However, what is not unusual is that we have another excellent candidate for the Lord Mayoralty, whom I now have the pleasure of nominating. He is my fellow ward councillor, Chris Culwick, who I nominate to become the Lord Mayor of the City of York 2021 to 22, with his wife, Mrs. Joy Culwick, as Lady Mayoress. Chris joined the council in May 2015 and has been a hard-working ward colleague and member of the council since. If we look back at Chris' life and career, it is clear why he's such an excellent choice. Having served as a curate in Nottingham, Chris came to York in 1984. He has been involved in the voluntary sector in the city for over 30 years and has been associated with many local organisations, such as the Spurriergate Centre, YACRO, who work with ex-offenders, the food banks, and Family Matters York. He was instrumental in developing York Street Angels, who are out late every Friday and Saturday, caring for and helping those who are vulnerable and in need of support. Chris is a great believer in taking the church to the people, as well as the people to the church. And it's quite clear that he has put that into practice in his ministry. Chris is an experienced chaplain, having worked at York St John University, as well as a period as chaplain at York City Football Club. As the football club's new ground is now established in our ward of Huntingdon and New Earswick, I'm sure he will continue to support them when he can. His chaplaincy experience has also included serving as chaplain to the Guild of Butchers, eventually becoming master. I'm assured that he's very experienced at attending formal dinners and giving the grace, which should stand him in very good stead when serving as Lord Mayor. It is very evident that Chris has good contacts locally, and this proved useful in his first election campaign. Having served as vicar of St Andrew's Church in Huntingdon for 50 years, he's very well known in the area. As the three of us, Chris, Councillor Keith Orrell and myself, were knocking on doors in the ward, voices were heard on doorsteps saying, "You married me, you baptised my baby," or even "you buried my gran." He was also warmly welcomed at one house where the resident was delighted to see him and had been one of the bell ringers at All Saints. It is also worth mentioning that Chris officiated at the marriage of Councillor Ashley Mason and Dee, who are about to become Sheriff and Sheriff's Lady. It's not often one member of the group can say they were married by another. That was a special day. In 2016, Chris and Joy celebrated 40 years of marriage by renewing their vows at All Saints Church in Huntingdon. Family and friends gathered to support them on this anniversary, and their sons, Peter and Simon, and their children joined them. I understand they may be watching the webcast from their homes in Brighton and Guernsey, and so we send them our greetings. Joy has been with Chris through all his ministries and his many voluntary roles, and I know that she will continue to be a strong supporter for him. Joy will be an excellent Lady Mayoress, well able to uphold with him the great and ancient traditions of the city. They will lead a dedicated and enthusiastic civic party, and I know that they will bring credit to the city of York and beyond. It's my great pleasure to ask members of council to support the nomination of Councillor Chris Culwick as Lord Mayor of York for the civic year 2021 to 22. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much. And I now call upon Councillor Rowley to second the motion.
Lord Mayor, Lord Mayor's Consort, Sheriff, Sheriff's Consort, members of the Council, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I was honoured to be asked to second the appointment of the Reverend Councillor Christopher Culwick as Lord Mayor of this great heritage-rich yet forward-looking city for the next municipal year, 2021-2022. But before I do, can I give my thanks and that of my party for the way in which you, Lord Mayor, have served our city for an unprecedented 2 years, and in particular, through the very difficult last 12 months of the global pandemic. Your stoicism and commitment to our city have been a tremendous example to us all. Coming back to Councillor Culwick, I have been fortunate enough to call Chris a friend for over 15 years. Although we disagree on our politics, there is far more that we do agree on than we don't. I'm also happy to say that our friendship has always risen above our respective political allegiances. As a wet behind the ears council fresher 2 years ago, one of the first emails I received in my newly created councillor email inbox was from Chris, congratulating me on my election and looking forward to working together for the next 4 years. I tried to remember exactly when I first met Chris. It could have been when I became involved in the York-based charity Family Matters York, where Chris was a trustee and founder. It might have been when I volunteered to join the newly formed Street Angels teams that patrol the city centre on a Friday and a Saturday night. It could have been when, as a school governor, I chatted with the York Schools and Youth Trust, or was it at One Voice at an outreach meeting, or a visit to the Spurriergate Centre for an evening of entertainment? The fact is, Chris has been instrumental in setting up many of the established outreach and community support charities that serve the city so well today. Chris was, I honestly believe, called to York in the early 80s. It seems this wild northern territory was in need of a strong but compassionate pastoral cleric, and Chris fitted the bill perfectly. Throughout the time I have been privileged to know Chris, his warmth, honesty, and impeccable integrity have shone through. Politics, as we all know, can sometimes be a dirty game. It's impossible to please all the people all the time. And however principled we feel about the decisions we make or support, there will always be those who try to use that against us. Whilst I wouldn't say that Chris is above all this, he does manage to maintain a dignified countenance throughout. They say behind every great man is an even greater woman. In my own work, both professionally and vocationally, I've been fortunate to be supported by my great woman, my wife, Elizabeth. Chris likewise has had joy to love, encourage, and support him in his ministry and work. And I know that she will be a wonderful Lady Mayoress, adding a touch of refined glamour and finesse to the civic party. A good example of partner support is giving us enough rope to run free, but not too much that we get tangled up and lose our way. Sometimes a firm tug on the rope is all that's needed to bring back some balance and stability. Elizabeth brilliantly provides that for me, and I'm sure Joy is equally brilliant in this regard. We've all heard the phrase, if you want something done, ask a busy person. Chris has demonstrated this in many areas. There is, however, strength in saying no. But even this, Chris does with dignity and without causing offence or upset. That, I'm afraid, is a quality I'm still trying to aspire to gain. Although retired from active ministry, Chris continues to perform pastoral duties when called upon. As a funeral director, I've often had to call on Chris to take services for us. Now, those of you that have seen Chris in his clerical robes will understand a family's request when wanting to have Chris take the funeral service. The son of the deceased couldn't remember Chris's name, but simply said to me, "It's the one who looks like Yoda when he takes the service." I can, however, confirm not just the resemblance to Yoda, but also the fact that Chris is a warm and reassuring figure, stood waiting for the cortege to make its way up the drive of the crematorium, and families feel comforted by his presence, his welcome, and his ministry. In closing, I want to refer to two pieces of classical literature. In Rudyard Kipling's poem If, he begins by extolling the virtue of those who can keep your head when all around you are losing theirs. Chris has the ability to present a calm and controlled exterior in any situation. I can honestly say that in 15 years, I have never seen him lose his temper or speak disrespectfully to anyone. As the chair of the planning committee, he has demonstrated a tolerance and fairness that is an exemplar to any prospective chair in the future. My second literary reference is a book well known to Chris. The Bible states in Matthew chapter 7 that those who follow Christ will be known by their fruits. In Galatians 5, verse 22, we are told that the fruits of the Spirit are love, joy, peace, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Chris demonstrates these fruits in abundance, and his work has touched many lives in many ways. And like a ripple, the effects of his actions reach far and wide. If these qualities are genuine, then the next municipal year, the office of Lord Mayor is in good hands. If they're not, then I think Chris should take up poker because he pulls them off brilliantly. I am therefore honoured to formally second my friend, the Reverend Councillor Christopher Culwick, to be appointed the Lord Mayor of York for the next municipal year. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rowley. Can I see all those in favour of the motion, please show. I think we are carried unanimously. So bear with us and we will sort out managing life in the new protocol. I shall take my glasses off. Oh, God.
The Lord Mayor, Councillor Christopher Colwick, will now make his declaration of acceptance of office.
I, Councillor Christopher Colwick, having been elected to the office of Lord Mayor of the City of York, hereby declare that I take the said office upon myself and will duly and faithfully fulfil the duties thereof according to the best of my judgment and ability.
The Lord Mayor will now take the oath of allegiance.
I, Christopher Colwick, Lord Mayor of the City of York, do swear by Almighty God that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, her heirs and successors according to law. Lady Mayoress, Sheriff's Consort, members of council, guests, friends. Thank you to my fellow councillors for putting your trust in me to uphold and maintain the dignity of the ancient office of the Right Honourable, the Lord Mayor of York. The mayoralty of York can be traced back to at least the year 1217. It was upgraded by Richard II to that of Lord Mayor in 1389. An unbroken succession of civic life in York, which still has much to contribute to the rich fabric of our city and is to be treasured. It is part of our DNA and just one of the many reasons why York should remain a unitary authority. Thank you to my colleague, Councillor Carol Runciman, for her very kind words. If you'll forgive me, just one correction. It was the Guild of Building to which I was master, not that of butchers. And to my good friend, Councillor Martin Rowley, with whom I have worked closely on various projects over many years. Thank you so much for your kind words. I only hope I can live up to them. Councillor Runciman, along with Councillor Keith Orrell, the outgoing Deputy Lord Mayor, are not only ward colleagues, but good and faithful friends, to whom I am indebted in many ways, and not least for their willingness to shoulder even more of the weight of work in the ward over the next year. And can I add my own thanks to Councillor Janet Looker for her service to the city, not just once as Lord Mayor, but over 3 terms as Lord Mayor. And I am immensely grateful to her for her graciousness and that of her civic party in agreeing to continue for a further year and thus spare this incoming team. Janet, you are famously fond of quoting Shakespeare, so I have been asking myself what might be appropriate today. And perhaps a few often quoted lines from As You Like It are fitting on this particular occasion. All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances. And one man or woman in his time plays many parts. Janet, you have and will continue to play many a significant part in the life of this city. I also take this opportunity to thank the fantastic team who've kindly agreed to serve alongside me, particularly to thank my good friend, Councillor Ashley Mason and his wife, Dee, who have already proved themselves to be enormously dedicated in taking up the role of Sheriff and Sheriff Lady, and who bring something fresh to civic life with their youth, their energy, and their sense of fun. I look forward to the year ahead. And I want to make a special point of thanking their employers for enabling them to take up this year of civic service. Thank you to St. Peter's School and to the University of York. Not least, I want to thank Joy, my partner of 45 years, for her willingness to take up the role of Lady Mayoress, and for what I know will be her faithful support and special contribution through the year ahead. My thanks also to Canon Chris Collingwood, who has kindly agreed to act as chaplain to the Lord Mayor and who has already been a source of enormous strength and wisdom, and will, I know, continue to be such as my chaplain. This last year has been painful for many. Many have lost loved ones, and it will be important to acknowledge this loss and celebrate these lives in a way we have as yet been unable to do. Chris, I hope you will help us to do this. Choosing charities for the civic year has been difficult. 2020-21 has been, well, it hardly needs saying, enormously challenging for charities in the city. And we want to support as many charities as possible. But more than 12 months ago, we had already agreed to promote 3 charities before the pandemic put everything on hold. And we are continuing with those same charities now, namely York Mind, offering mental health support, which is desperately needed at this time. SASH, Safe and Sound Homes, working with young people at risk of homelessness. And the Wilberforce Trust, until recently based in Huntington, supporting those of all ages experiencing sight or hearing loss. And we're delighted that Bridget Maynell is chairing our excellent fundraising group. We invite you to support their endeavors through the coming year. However, we are determined not to limit our support to these 3 charities. The last year or so has taught us many things. One of these is that York has a fantastic opportunity through its volunteering culture. An estimated 70% volunteer in some way in the city. We've seen this demonstrated wonderfully with thousands of volunteers stepping forward and helping the city through these difficult times, neighbors and communities pulling together, and partners across the city working together as never before. So we want to take every opportunity this year to celebrate and encourage volunteers and recognize the valuable contribution many charities, social enterprises, churches and faith communities make every day to the well-being of the city. Secondly, we've learned just how much we depend on our key workers. This year will be a time to recognize and celebrate all our frontline and key workers, including our care workers and NHS staff. And we are already exploring suitable and significant ways in which their dedication can be recognized. Thirdly, this last year has highlighted inequalities and disadvantage. I am proud that in 2017, York was the first UK city to declare itself to be a city of human rights. And the recent York City of Human Rights audit of the impact of the pandemic holds up for us a mirror to better understand where we are failing to fully welcome and fully value every member of the community and their contribution. So we are also determined to use this special opportunity to celebrate fully the diversity we enjoy in our city. This is not only a time for York to build back or build back better, but to build back fairer. And whatever small part this civic party can play in bringing that about, we are dedicated to do. Thank you for your support as we all work together to serve what we know is the best city in the world in God's own county. Finally, I want to record my thanks to the officers of the council responsible for making today possible. It has been incredibly hard work, and in doing so, they've had to overcome countless challenges along the way. Their task of presenting a physical meeting with all necessary precautions was a big ask, so they have brought us to a big ask. They've done their utmost to square an impossible circle. And I'm only sorry it's not been possible to accommodate so many who would otherwise be here and who are an important part of this occasion, including fellow councillors, aldermen, and special guests. I am pleased we have at least been able to live stream this event, and I invite all who watch this to sign our virtual book. And we can all look forward to a time in the not too distant future when we can celebrate appropriately. I can think of no greater honour and privilege than to serve as the Lord Mayor of York, and I will do my utmost to live up to the trust placed in me today to serve the city well through what is bound to be a year like no other. Thank you very much. So we come to the second item of our agenda, the ceremony for the appointment of sheriff. Councillor Barker will now propose a motion for the appointment of sheriff.
Lord Mayor, Mayor's Concert, Sheriff, Sheriff's Lady, members of the Council, distinguished guests. My duty today is to propose Mr. Ashley Mason as the Sheriff of the York for the municipal year 2021 to 2022. I was truly honoured when Ashley asked me to propose him as the Sheriff. It transpires he'd already asked everyone else. But such was Ashley's nervousness and asked me to give the speech, he asked to see a copy of it first, which, being a true friend, I duly obliged. However, this is the second speech he hasn't seen, and his nervousness is well found. Ashley is a York man through and through, attending both school and college here, and as someone who has dedicated his life to helping people and organisations, all this while struggling with and overcoming an eye condition that leaves him extremely short-sighted. So when he says he hasn't seen an item of council business, genuinely he hasn't. Maybe a little too useful at times. I mentioned he's helped people and organisations, not only as a councillor, but in so many other ways too. But for your relief, I will be brief. He was elected to the council in 2015, has served as the vice chair for the Police, Fire and Crime Panel for the last 5 years, governor of a mental health trust, director of Make It York, and sits on charity boards including the Museums Trust, Theatre and York CVS. Ashley is currently chair of the licensing committee, where he enjoys being out of the town, or RAS as he refers it to, speaking to landlords and understanding their needs. Some say the ale assizes are the only reason he is standing as sheriff. I'm sure there are a list of thirsty councillors looking for an invitation to join him. I know I'm one of them. As an entrepreneur and a businessman with a conscience, possibly a rare thing these days, Ashley has set up and implemented many innovative projects. These include setting up an alcohol recovery centre to support university students to recuperate safely during Freshers' Week, thus taking pressure off the NHS hospital and ambulance services. In addition, he has taken the initiative and led on placing paramedics in GP surgeries and at some of the UK's biggest nightclubs. He has used his team and resources to make a real difference to his community here in York, from delivering free first aid training to York Street Angels, offering free blood pressure checks in the city centre, and setting up a year-long campaign to offer free CPR training throughout the city, which over 280 people have taken up. Never one to sit still, Ashley became the city's youngest JP, where he sits on the North and West York Magistrates Executive Board and is the lead young magistrate covering the 8 benches of the North Eastern region. During this most recent pandemic, Ashley was working hard to support St Peter's School to keep their students and staff safe and well. It was during this time Ashley went on to set up a network of independent school health leads just before lockdown to share best practice and mutually support each other. He has also provided support to two local authorities who established a local tracing service. His role as a regional chair of St John Ambulance means he knows firsthand how much volunteers have given to support the front line. And on a slightly separate note, I know Ashley will wish to thank the headmaster, Mr. Jeremy Walker, for allowing him to take up the office of the Sheriff of York while still continuing as head of health service at St Peter's. Ashley is a proud and active member of the Company of Merchant Venturers, nominated to join in 2018 by the then Lord Lieutenant Barry Dodd and the late Honorary Freeman Dr. Richard Shepherd. It's an organisation he believes has a lot of potential to support the city and the county. He is currently chairing their fundraising committee that uses money to support entrepreneurship, education and projects for young people, a cause very close to his own heart. And I know he is keen to help raise the profile of the City Guilds. We've already heard that behind every great man is a great woman. And whilst Ashley might not be great, well, not yet anyway, the same cannot be said for his wife Danielle, who will be a superb sheriff's lady and an ambassador for this city. Whilst working at the university as part of the team responsible for the safety and security of the campus and its students and staff, Danielle has crewed Red Cross ambulances in her time off to support the NHS. And I feel it is fair to say, without Danielle's support, Ashley would not be able to dedicate so much of his time to public service. An alternative theory is Danielle prefers her own space and Ashley makes the place look untidy, and she's quite happy to get rid of him from time to time. In sum, the office of the Sheriff of York was established in 1396 and is the oldest such office in England. I am certain that the trust, the traditions and the dignity of the office will be upheld by Ashley as he goes about his duties in this forthcoming year. It therefore gives me very great pleasure in proposing the motion for the nomination of Ashley Mason as the Sheriff of the City of York for the municipal year 2021 to 2022. Lord Mayor, thank you.
Will now second the motion.
It's tradition for a member of an opposing party to second the nomination for sheriff in the spirit of civic unity. And so I'm happy to take the opportunity to do so. And the reminder that despite our party political differences and the big differences of opinion that we may have to thresh out in council meetings, we can put that aside in the interest of the city, its residents, and the traditions of York. Ashley and I usually work closest together on licensing matters. He's the chair and I'm the vice chair of the Licensing and Regulatory Committee. And we've had enough pints together that I know firsthand that he's plenty familiar with the licensed hospitality industry and nighttime economy of our city. We've been chatting over some drinks about why he wants to be the Sheriff of York. He's honoured to be an ambassador for the city and excited to raise money for charity. But what really makes his eyes light up was talking about using the position to champion young people. Ashley likes to refer to himself as a young councillor. Personally, I see him as an experienced councillor. He's older than me, and I know he's got a birthday in a couple of days that sets him firmly in his 30s. He's old enough now that the next time somebody stands up like this to make a nice speech about him will probably be, well, who knows, possibly on becoming Lord Mayor. Apparently it's against the law to become Lord Mayor a day short of 40, but that's not so far off. But regardless of his own youth, Ashley cares about improving opportunities and experiences for young people, and I know he will use the position of sheriff to do this more. He's chaired a panel making decisions about financial grants to youth groups. He used to volunteer for the charity Disability, Equality and Education to support teachers in making classes more accessible. During his 6 years as a volunteer for the Red Cross, he worked with schools in West Yorkshire to support children to deal with drug overdoses and knife injuries. He was part of the panel that appointed the very first Children's Commissioner for England and has met with MPs to advocate for young people. So I know he will use his time as sheriff to promote the importance of young people playing an active part in society. Ashley enjoys the ceremonial aspects of being a councillor. It's somewhere else that we don't completely agree. He's a royalist and I'm a Republican, but I respect that he will be proud to uphold the sheriff's links to the monarchy. He will embrace the ambassadorial aspects of the sheriff's role and wear the robes with pride and care, especially if there's also a special hat. Ashley Mason and Chris Colwick have chosen some excellent charities to fundraise for. I know Ashley will go above and beyond to raise as much money as possible for these great causes that he genuinely cares about. He's already started trying to find out what is the tallest building in the city that he can abseil off. He's literally willing to get that high above the buildings and fall backwards into the air. He'll bend over backwards for this city. Ashley Mason is a notable and very special person, and I'm happy to second his nomination for the notable and very special role of Sheriff of York for the civic year 2021-2022.
Thank you very much. Can I ask all those in favour of this motion? I'm sure that is carried. I declare the motion carried and Councillor Ashley Mason has been appointed as Sheriff of the City of York for the municipal year 2021-2022.
The Sheriff, Councillor Mason, will now make his declaration of acceptance of office.
I, Ashley Mason, having been elected to the office of Sheriff of the City of York, declare that I take the said office upon myself and will duly and faithfully fulfil the duties of it according to the best of my judgment and ability.
The Sheriff will now take the oath of allegiance.
I, Ashley Mason, Sheriff of the City of York, do swear by Almighty God that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, her heirs and successors, according to law. Lord Mayor, Lady Mayoress, Sheriff's Lady, members of council, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. What a huge privilege and real honour it is to be elected as the Sheriff, an office that goes back over 1,000 years. The Sheriffs of York have seen many turbulent years. However, as we emerge from the pandemic, I'm sure there'll be no other year like this. One where I hope the Civic Party can make a real difference. When I look back at my last physical council meeting, it was just pre the first lockdown, March 2020. We were only allowed to have 6 guests, or 6 people even, or 6 members, in the largest council meeting room. And as one member came in or one officer came in that went over 6, the other had to leave. Contrast that with my last council meeting on Monday evening when I chaired a Zoom-powered licensing hearing, sat with an open collar shirt, pyjama bottoms and slippers, somewhat different to today's attire. Lord Mayor, I hope the neighbours have been watching today's proceedings on the webcast. For the past 2 weeks, they've witnessed the daily rituals of the Sheriff's Lady ceremoniously putting on and taking off my dressing gown in preparation for today's events, something that I've quite enjoyed. 2 years ago, Councillor Looker described annual council as being like attending one's own funeral with the perk of hearing all the nice things that people say about you. However, for me, it felt a little bit more like a wedding day, nervous for Councillor Barker's best man speech. Thank you, James, and thank you, Rachel, for the really kind words that you both said. When I told people I was going to be sheriff, they expected spurs, horse, a gold 5-star badge. Many people are disappointed, Lord Mayor, when they hear that I get an ermine robe, frilly cuffs, and this year, a City of York Council issued face mask. Although the 24-carat gold chain always keeps some appeal. The reason the city has its own sheriffs goes back a long way. In the 1300s, the people of York didn't like the Sheriff of Yorkshire ruling over them. They wanted one of their own in the city to discharge the royal duties. This wish was granted in 1396, and York's new royal charter from Richard II made York its own county and allowed it to appoint 2 of its own sheriffs. These sheriffs were elected in a manner somewhat different to how we do things today and slightly less dignified. 4 sheriffs, or 4 candidates even, were presented to the commonalty. The 2 candidates who secured the loudest votes were elected. Not Lord Mayor, a very COVID-safe procedure. Like all good acceptance speeches, a significant part has got to be put down to thanking people. Firstly, Lord Mayor, to you for allowing me to take up this role. We're both really excited to be supporting you and Joy and looking forward to a unique and special year. I was going to put a pun here about Councillor Culwick marrying me, but it will fall on deaf ears now. Councillor Runciman spoiled the joke. But safe to say, we've got some experience of taking part in events together. Next down the list has to be our parents, and particularly to my mum. Without her support, encouragement and drive, I would not be the person I am today, and I would be poorer for it. She has inspired me and pushed me to achieve and succeed, and I'll always be thankful. Our employers, who have already been mentioned several times, do deserve some recognition. So thank you to Jeremy Walker, Headmaster at St Peter's, Jeff Brown from the University of York. Civic posts like this shouldn't be the preserve of the retired. York is a great city because it embraces diversity, and this is a great example of it. Employers that support their younger employees to be active citizens should rightly be recognised. Thank you both. My ward councillors do deserve a special mention. And I think Councillor Fenton, I'm putting my head on the sheriff's chopping block, basically, is the most hardest working councillor I've ever met and maybe the best on the authority. I'm sure he will be doing a great deal this year to support me, although I'm keen I still get to deliver leaflets so I can keep the weight down. Councillor Widdowson also is the best at providing the councillor nibbles and drinks at our catch-ups. And again, I've told the Lord Mayor how important it is for me to continue to attend these. I'll be formally nominating my undersheriff shortly, but I'm pleased to say that Andrew Digwood, a Lancastrian, will be a huge asset to the Civic Party, a solicitor by trade and just ending his 2-year term as president of the York and North Yorkshire Chamber of Commerce. He's done a huge amount for the city, supporting and championing businesses through the pandemic. My chaplain, the Reverend Luke Tillett, who's the area dean of York and vicar of James the Deacon Church in Woodthorpe, will take over the role of sheriff's chaplain. Luke's worked incredibly hard over the pandemic, making sure that he got out in his parish and kept the church open as much as possible. I'm really, really pleased to have Luke and Andrew's support. My thanks also to Councillor Orrell, a wine connoisseur who has inspired my wine interest, who will be taking over the reins of Chair of Licensing, another exciting notch to his council belt. My thanks also to the staff and contractors who have made today possible under a constantly changing horizon. Before I thank the outgoing sheriff and her predecessor, I want to express my sincere thanks to Danielle. Without her love, support, kindness, and dare I say patience, I would not be able to do so much. She will be a real representative for York who people can believe in and has so much energy, may even bringing TikTok to the Civic Party. Finally, Jo, our outgoing sheriff. Not only did she take up office in 2019 at very short notice, with the assistance of Daff Williams stepping in for a few months, she also extended her term for another year, which in the sheriff world is unheard of. Sheriffs have served a 1-year term for centuries to prevent them from grabbing too much power. However, Jo's support to Janet when they extended their tenures during the pandemic and the dark days of 2020 should be recognised. Thank you, Jo, and thank you, Daff, for your cheruval service to our wonderful city. Lastly, Lord Mayor, I just want to say a little about my personal aims over the year, on top of what you've already outlined about us championing diversity, volunteers, and recognising key workers. As a young person involved in so many aspects of society, I know just how important it is for young people to be able to help and shape organisations and be involved in decision making. I'm really pleased to be working with York CVS, NIBEP, the University, York Cares, several other individuals and organisations as we create a platform to support and inform young people. I always say young people, but basically people under 40. So lots of people in this room are now young, but to support young people to take active roles in society and promote opportunities to them, whether that be as trustees, magistrates, governors, or even as councillors. We're also looking at putting together resources that will be able to support employers and charities to show them the benefits and how to make opportunities accessible to young people so they can truly have diverse decision-making boards. We look to push this further afield once established in York and would welcome the support of anybody here or watching who feels they can help us further our aims. Thank you again, Lord Mayor, for choosing me to be Sheriff of York, and thank you, Council, for electing me. I really love York, and as Councillor Melly says, I'm really looking forward, and it'll be a privilege and a pleasure to take up this post. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mason. So we come to item 3 of the agenda, the appointment of Deputy Lord Mayor. I would like to thank Councillor Keith Orrell for undertaking the role of Deputy Lord Mayor over the last 2 years. Thank you. And I move that Councillor Janet Looker be elected as Deputy Lord Mayor of the City of York for the municipal year 2021-2022. Councillor Galvin will now second the motion. Thank you, Councillor Galvin. All those in favour of the motion? That seems unanimous. I declare the motion carried and that Councillor Janet Looker has been elected Deputy Lord Mayor for the municipal year 2021-2022.
The Deputy Lord Mayor will now make her declaration of acceptance of office.
I, Janet Looker, having been elected to the office of Deputy Lord Mayor of the City of York, hereby declare that I take the said office upon myself and will duly and faithfully fulfil the duties thereof, according to the best of my judgment and ability.
The Deputy Lord Mayor will now take the affirmation of allegiance.
I, Janet Looker, Deputy Lord Mayor of the City of York, do solemnly, sincerely and truly declare and affirm and say that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, her heirs and successors, according to the law.
Thank you very much, Councillor Looker. We move to item 4 of the agenda, the appointment of the Under-Sheriff.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Very, very pleased to be nominating Andrew Digwood, a lawyer, to take over the role as Under-Sheriff. He'll do a great job in supporting the Civic Party. And someone did mention about the Chief Constable sat next to him because he's a Lancastrian, and that isn't true. But I know he's going to be a great asset to us. So thank you, Andrew, in advance for the service you'll give us. Thank you.
Thank you. And as we come to item 5, the presentation of badges of office. Councillor Kilbane will propose a vote of thanks to the outgoing Lord Mayor and Consort.
Lord Mayor, actually it suits you, I think. Lady Mayoress, Sheriff's Lady, councillors, officers, absent friends, colleagues, and members of the public, it is my great honour to be able to propose the vote of thanks to the outgoing Lord Mayor and Consort. Now, Councillor Looker has asked me to be brief, and I always do what Janet says. You'll be pleased to hear, so I will be brief, but I can't let the moment pass without paying tribute also to Janet on the occasion of her silver anniversary, because for 25 years, Janet has served the people of Guildhall with honesty, integrity, and diligence. And I think we should also pay tribute to all of those years of public service. Little did you know, Janet, when you donned those chains of office 2 years ago, the dreadful pandemic that was to befall our city and our nation and the world. This caused last year's annual meeting to be cancelled, which meant a continuation of the office for Councillor Looker. And I have to say, you rose to the challenge with your usual gusto and aplomb. And in those circumstances, I can think of few people who the city could rely upon to be so solid and as an anchor point for local government through some of its most difficult years. So thank you for that, Janet. In doing so, you also became the longest serving Lord Mayor since 1933. And also, and this is for the record books, you also became the longest serving female Lord Mayor in the entire 800+ year history of the office. So we thank you and congratulate you. So it gives me pleasure to propose this vote of thanks on behalf of ourselves in this room, but also on behalf of the Two Ridings charity that Janet has supported, Citizens Advice York, Home Start, and York Shakespeare's Project. You are in every way, Janet, York's first resident, and I move this vote of thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kilbane. Councillor Galvin will now second the motion.
Lord Mayor, Lady Mayoress, Sheriff, Sheriff's Lady, members of council, ladies and gentlemen. I suppose it is appropriate that the oldest member of the council should second the vote of thanks to the second oldest member of the council, who is a bit younger than I am. As we're all aware, last year when the pandemic hit, Janet stepped up to the plate and continued as Lord Mayor for a second year. Bearing in mind also that Janet had served a term, I think, in around 2004. So Janet Looker has certainly done her bit. So Janet Looker has certainly done her bit for the civic life of the city. I was asked to be brief, Lord Mayor, and brief I will be. I'd just like to make a couple of points. Janet has served this city for many years, as has already been alluded to, as a city councillor and a North Yorkshire County councillor in the days when York was a district council within North Yorkshire. Lord Mayor, there is so much that Janet has achieved in her role as a councillor, especially in the field of education and young people. Far too much to even think about relating today. Like me, Janet is passionate about York. She's passionate about the history of York. She's passionate about the civic traditions of York, along with the customs and practices. And last but not least, she's passionate about the role of Lord Mayor. Well, Mayor, the city owes a debt of gratitude to this lady. And on behalf of the city and the council, I say to Janet, thank you for all you have achieved as a councillor, especially for the 2 years as the Right Honourable Lord Mayor of York. I second the motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Galvin. All those in favour, please show. I'm sure that's unanimous. The motion is carried.
The Lord Mayor will now present the outgoing Lord Mayor and Consort with their badges of office. Yes. Yes, it is.
Lord Mayor, Lady Mayoress, Sheriff, Sheriff's Lady, friends, comrades, fellow councillors, one and all, it has been an extraordinary 2 years. Can I first say, I was very struck listening to Councillor Runciman's proposal around Councillor Chris Culwick as Lord Mayor, whom I've also met in all sorts of circumstances in my varied life. But one of the things she mentioned was the number of people who pop up and say to him, "Oh, I remember you, you married me." I've had the reverse experience. People pop up all the time when I'm out, and especially on civic duties, saying, "Oh, I remember you, you did my divorce." So I think Councillor Culwick and I, Lord Mayor and I, have served opposite ends of the population. One put them together and one took them apart. Perhaps not the same people. I haven't done a cross-check analysis. I was also rather pleased that he stopped short in quoting "as you like it." I know the speech and it's very good, but it moves towards the end. It says, when you get to your 7th age, sans teeth, sans eyes, sans everything. And I liked to feel that perhaps I hadn't quite reached the 7th age just yet. I'm putting it off for a little bit longer. It has been a most incredible experience doing the civic year for 2 years, effectively. Although the second part, which was actually longer than the first part, was probably not typical. I have to, if I go back to remember, and one is allowed to remember on Lord Mayor's Day, if I go back to remember some of the high spots of our civic year, I can remember some very splendid occasions. I can remember a Pan-African fundraiser out at the university where we celebrated with African food and dance and song, and it was a tremendous, wonderful social gathering, and it raised a little bit of money. So it was a great event, and I will always remember that one. I remember being privileged as a Guildhall councillor, I am able to do when I'm Lord Mayor, holding the residents' forum meeting. I never know whether we're ward committees or what we are, but you know what I mean. Holding that in the Mansion House, and I have some photographs of me all dressed up, chairing a residents' forum in the stateroom, and it's a real privilege to be able to exert that privilege. The Guildhall ward embraces the Mansion House, so that was good. And there was a wonderful opportunity to go down to London and be a guest with my consort, who at that time, I'm afraid, wasn't my sister, who's done such valiant work, but my eldest daughter, who lives in London, and she joined me for a Freeman Guild banquet in the Guildhall. By God, you've no idea. You've just no idea. I mean, I must admit, it does put York's Guildhall slightly in the shade, though we may be older. But those were some very special occasions. But then we came to March the 15th, and both my consort and I remember March the 15th with clarity. We had our civic dinner on the 13th, slightly aware of the COVID virus that was around and trying not to hug each other. But we had a full civic dinner. And then on the Saturday, we went to an event in the morning with the Georgian Society. And in the evening, we went to Selby to take part in an event that the chairman of Selby Council was organising. And then we came home in the car wonderfully. And on Sunday morning, I got a text to say that somebody we had been in close contact with had developed COVID-19. And then life stopped. Life completely stopped. Well, almost completely stopped. But civic life, as I hope the incoming civic party will at least get some taste of, civic life as we know it stopped. And for several months, we just literally did nothing at all until very slowly things slightly reverted to, I hope, some sort of activity. We got the hang of the Zoom. I have to say, if you really want an interesting challenge, chairing full council meetings on Zoom is an extraordinary experience. And it has the great opportunity of being able to turn to somebody and say, can you just switch their microphone off? And they are muted. But you also get the frustration of yelling at this screen, you're on mute. How will we ever forget those expressions? You are on mute. Unmute yourself, councillor. But I hope that by the end of my term, I have just about got the hang of chairing council meetings on Zoom. But really what I want to use this speech for is to say thank you, is to say a huge thank you. I want to say a big thank you to my colleagues who have been with me over these 2 years. Particularly, I will say a big thank you to my sister who stepped into being Lord Mayor's consort with reasonably strong enthusiasm and seemed to feel she would be up to it and was fantastic. You just have to see my sister in action on all variety of social occasions. If I don't know people, she does. And if she doesn't know them, I do. So between us, we pretty well cover the city. And she didn't do all of them. We used to go and have nice monthly meetings and go through the calendar and say, well, can you do that one? No, I can't do that one. Okay, I'll get somebody else to do that one. So we did. I do recommend, it is nice occasionally to vary your consorts because it gives a little bit of extra variety to the civic life. So we used to sit and do that for until, as I say, till March the 15th. So enormous thank you to Patricia, who has been a wonderful friend and support and has valiantly carried on doing really nothing for the last year. Part of the problem of being a civic party in a pandemic is that because numbers are limited, you tend to focus on just the Lord Mayor. I want to say a huge thank you to my sheriff, Jo, and her consort, Bill. Very good, very old friends of mine. I don't think they quite knew what they were getting into. As I said, it didn't help that Jo had already booked her holiday at the time of Lord Mayor's Council in 2019, so she wasn't able to do it. So we for the first time in York's life, got a substitute sheriff, former councillor David Williams, who stepped into that role wonderfully and for a couple of months was sheriff. But then Jo was able to take the office and the oath and has been beside me throughout the year, and then quite amazingly found herself being roped in to do it for a second year, which was not on the original game plan. But she has been wonderful. She and Bill have been, where needed, they've been there and very supportive and very, very positive in their relationship with the civic office. So thanks to both of them very much. Then can I say a very big thank you to Margaret, who is standing at the back there and who has been a constant support and help throughout one's civic year. The one thing a Lord Mayor needs is somebody to manage their diary, to tell them when they're going to be doing something, where they're going to get picked up, where they're going to go, when you're going to get home, and very importantly for a woman, well, no, for a man too, what you ought to be wearing. Is it a dinner jacket event? Is it a what they call cocktail dress event? Neither of us have ever been able to work out what a cocktail dress is, so we just turn up. But it is a huge job to do, and it's the thing that makes the civic party move seamlessly and smoothly through various events. So Margaret, thank you for putting up with us. You have been so patient and so kind, and we have appreciated it enormously. And then I want to say thank you to all, particularly to the civic support officers who primarily drive the car for you. Huge job. They have to know where you're going. They have to know how to get there. Don't always get that right, but 9 times out of 10 they do. And I will say a big thank you to John and Rich, who did the bulk of our civic support work while we were actively Lord Mayor. And then I will say a second thank you to Richard Gatecliffe, who stepped up and took on the role of being a very, 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 very occasional Lord Mayor's driver during the pandemic when we have done very little. But he has actually also kept the car going. Apparently cars don't go very well if you don't use them very often. And the first time we went to use DN1 after we'd been locked down for several months, the whole thing wouldn't start because it hadn't been driven anywhere. And I believe there was the odd cobweb somewhere. So he has taken on the job of keeping the car moving so that we have had a car when we did need it to pick us up and take us to places. So I thank all of them very much. I thank the people who have been part of the Mansion House, certainly during that first year when we are very busy and very active, and who have facilitated and enabled all sorts of functions to take place in the Mansion House, and have been very helpful when we needed to perhaps tread on some of their toes, but they have also asked us, and we have been happy to make accommodations when we recognise that the Mansion House is now a place where you are trying to raise an income from its commercial activities. So there's a lot of give and take. But thank you very much to Isaac and the rest of the team at the Mansion House for being such wonderful supports to us and carrying swords and maces around like there's nobody's business. And thank you very much, a very particular thank you to a dear friend of mine, Richard Pollitt, who has been managing the Mansion House so superbly for such a long time. There is nobody knows that house like he does. Its history, the benefit of all the extraordinary treasures that it holds, and has been part of trying to get it started as a more commercial attraction. So I would thank him personally for his support and help during these last 2 years. So thank you to everybody, and thank you to my fellow councillors. Thank you enormously to Councillor Fitzpatrick, and Councillor Denise Craghill, who have had the burden of having to cope with a fellow councillor who was not always around when they should be, but they've picked up the pieces and looked after the events in Guildhall Ward admirably. So it's been a very strange 2 years, but I probably wouldn't have missed it in the end. So thank you all very much. And I look forward to getting back into politics. You haven't seen anything yet. Thank you. No, I forgot. Sorry, God, it's memory. Short-term memory vanishes. I have introduced each council meeting that we have had over the last 2 years with a poem. I can't leave you without one, so I'm going to give you one now. When I'm an old woman, I shall wear purple with a red hat that doesn't go and doesn't suit me. I shall spend my pension on brandy and summer gloves and satin sandals and say, we have no money for butter. I shall sit down on the pavement when I am tired and gobble up the samples in shops and press alarm bells and run my stick along the public railings and make up for the sobriety of my youth. I shall go out in my slippers in the rain and pick the flowers in other people's gardens and learn to spit. You can wear terrible shirts and grow more fat and eat 3 pounds of sausages at a go, or only bread and pickles for a week, and collect pens and pencils and beer mats and things in boxes. But now we must have clothes that keep us dry and pay the rent and set a good example to the children. We must have friends to dinner and read the papers. But perhaps I should start to practice a little now, so that people who know me are not too shocked and surprised when suddenly I'm old and I start to wear purple. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Looker. Thank you. I call Councillor Musson to now propose a vote of thanks to the outgoing Sheriff and Sheriff's Consort.
Lord Mayor, Lady Mayoress, Sheriff's Lady, guests, members of the council near and far, officers and members of the public. Some people say behind every man is a great woman. Sometimes, and on this occasion, behind a great woman stands another great woman. It is with great honour that I have the chance to speak about one of these great women, Joanna Trifle. Jo's lived and worked in York for 50 years, and through those 50 years has provided immeasurable support to many citizens through her work and career, particularly working and specialising in the representation of children and parents in care proceedings. But what is most important to tell you about Jo is something that those of us who know her know well. She is a good person who cares deeply about others and the people of York and has a strong sense of justice. In her career, in her role as sheriff, including her work with the Lord Mayor's charities, but also as a citizen of York, she has helped countless people. While I know Jo represented the office of sheriff with dignity and poise in a civic sense, I can certainly say that it is to our benefit as citizens that she was not motivated by the ceremony or regalia of the office or by the status of the role, but of the platform to represent what she believes in and what is right. She has done York proud and will continue to do so whether she's wearing a sheriff's hat or not. I know I speak for many of us when I say thank you, Jo, for your guidance, wisdom, kindness and support. You are without a doubt a truly great woman.
Thank you, Councillor Musson, and Councillor Fitzpatrick will now second the motion.
Lord Mayor, Lady Mayoress, Sheriff, Sheriff's Lady, members of council, guests and officers. It gives me great privilege to be able to thank Jo in the year that she's had, well, 2 years in fact. I just want to set a little bit of context as to how she came to be in this role. She can choose to blame me if she wishes as the years go by. After the election in 2019, well, slightly before it really, it was decided, I suppose, or discussed, because these things are very political and done in protocol, that I would be the next Lord Mayor for our particular party. Sadly, my own personal life was such at the time that I really couldn't. My mother was very, very ill and I couldn't take up post. We didn't even think that we would have the role that year, but as are the vagaries of political life, as we all know, it was such that the party that I belonged to had to take it up immediately. So of course, as we've said, Janet is so stoic and resilient and stepped in immediately. But it doesn't just fall to the person who is Lord Mayor. You have to get your civic team together, and most Lord Mayors will have at least 6 months to think of these things. But she immediately thought of Jo, and Jo stepped up to the plate without any qualms whatsoever, albeit that she was on holiday to start with, and Daffyd Williams stepped in initially. But Jo really has done a marvellous job. So I want to say thank you, Jo, for stepping up like that. You've made me feel less guilty that I landed Janet with the Lord Mayor's role, and particularly as it has taken 2 years really of your life, because that's what happens when you take on a role like this. It is virtually your whole life. So well done and thank you very much to Jo. And I have to say that one thing we have in common is that we have both broken a wrist in the last 6 months. But Jo, unlike me, managed to carry the whole thing off with aplomb and decorum, and her chains and wearing a sling seemed to go hand in hand. So again, well done for your stoicism. So it gives me great pleasure to be able to second the motion of thanks for Jo and the marvellous work that she has done. Thank you.
All those in favour? please show. The motion is carried.
The Lord Mayor will now present the outgoing sheriff and sheriff's consort with their badges of office. This is the sheriff consort.
Lord Mayor, Lady Mayoress, Sheriff, Sheriff's Lady, members of the council, and ladies and gentlemen. When I was training to be a lawyer, someone said to me, if you're in court and someone says something you were intending to say, don't say it. So my speech is shorter than it would otherwise have been because so many of the remarks have actually already been made by those who have spoken before. I should like to thank the Lord Mayor and Councillor Musson for their kind remarks, and I'm pleased if I've been able to serve them and the City of York. This has not been a typical term of office, as has been stated. For me, it started as the consort to the Lord Mayor in a storm which accompanied the gay pride procession round the centre of York. And when I got to the end of that, feeling thoroughly drenched, I thought, well, if I can do this, I can do anything. And I hope I've discharged my functions adequately. I think I have been the 1057th and 1058th sheriff of the City of York. I haven't counted them all. I take it on trust. And that's an extraordinary thought, and perhaps a good question for pub quizzes and who wants to be a millionaire. I should like to thank Daff, who took over, well, didn't take over, he started my term of office as the substitute sheriff. And I missed being here, as it were, 2 years ago by one day because my flight back from Greece was one day before the 23rd of May, 2019. Unlike most of the people in this room, I have no experience of local government. Until recently, the world of robes and chains and processions was unknown to me. Not anymore. I have to say I came to it with a slightly skeptical eye, seeing it initially as a kind of pantomime with more purpose or street theatre. But as the year progressed, I realised that actually the Lord Mayor and the Civic Party and the ceremony attached to it all were valued by old people, schools, voluntary organisations, as well as the institution of the church, the hospital, and even the Royal Air Force. The Lord Mayoralty is deeply embedded in York's fabric, and I have particularly valued taking part in various citizenship ceremonies. One can't be sceptical about the value the new citizens of the UK so obviously place in those ceremonies. Janet and I must be in many photo albums around the world now and interwoven in the history of those families who now make the UK and York their home. I've enjoyed the fun of race days, beauty of the candlelit Minster, and above all, I've appreciated the courtesy and generosity of welcome from so many people who have welcomed the Civic Party in church halls and guild halls and Zoom meetings alike. I'm particularly pleased to have been able to help with the fundraising for the Lord Mayor's charities, 15 in all over our 2 years, 3 in the first year and 12 in the second. I won't name them all, but they are all dedicated to the welfare of the people of York, and in the last year, the arts and young people especially. We have raised a total of almost £40,000 in those 2 years, and I am very pleased that we've done that. The first year of fundraising was helped by the then Deputy Mayor, Barbara Boyce, and representatives of the charities, Citizens Advice, Home Start, and the York Shakespeare Project, as well as other well-wishers, like the Lord Mayor, and it is his repetition. I will never forget the African drumming, not least by Mrs. Crawshaw, at our Pan-African Day at the university, and thanks go to Bill Hill for his help in that enterprise. Thanks are also due to our Under-Sheriff, Dorothy Knott, who would have been here, but selflessly gave up her place to make arrangements easier. Dorothy has been a terrific support during our 2 years, loaning her lovely garden for meetings about our charities and her input into how the fundraising should be arranged. So thank you, Dorothy. Thank you also to the Two Ridings Foundation for assistance in the second year of fundraising, when the normal face-to-face occasions could not happen. Isabel Clough and the team at Two Ridings were fun to work with and also very efficient. And finally, I heartily echo and endorse all the remarks Janet has made about the staff that have supported us in our 2 years. Really, their work in making sure we turned up at the right time, at the right place, suitably attired, is extraordinary. And above all, thanks to Margaret and her endeavours. I mustn't stop before I've thanked my consort, Bill Trifle. There were other consorts along the way, but he bore the brunt of supporting me in what we have done. And now, finally, thanks to the Deputy Lord Mayor, as she now is, for asking me to be her sheriff. I think I said when I was appointed in 2019, a long time ago, that it would be a delight to work with her again, as we have been colleagues in the past. And so indeed it has proved. Thank you, Janet, for the adventure and the signal honour you have offered me.
Thank you very much. Before we move on to item 6, the formal business of the council, I think it's appropriate that we take an adjournment for a few minutes. So a 5-minute adjournment, by all means stretch, but continue to maintain social distance, and you know the score. But we're going to take a break for 5 minutes. namely the allocation of places and councillors to committees and other bodies for 2021-2022. The details of those proposed appointments are now amended further, and so I'm going to invite the Deputy Town Clerk, please, to take us through those amendments in order that hopefully we can all then move on. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. During the course of this morning, I have received a correspondence from an independent councillor, Councillor D. Taylor. The contents of the correspondence that I have received mean that I advise Council this afternoon to not vote on the allocation of seats for the following committees: Audit and Governance Committee and the Economy and Place Scrutiny Committee. The reason for this is that further discussions need to take place with Councillor D. Taylor to ascertain his position. Please note that I have now received a nomination for Councillor Baker to take up the place on the Corporate and Customer Services Scrutiny Committee. And Councillor Baker asks that she be substituted by Councillor Wan. I would also like to take this opportunity finally to advise that there has been an amendment to the printed documentation relating to the chair of the Licensing and Regulatory Committee. As Council, you have heard already this morning, Councillor Mason will not put himself forward as chair of this committee, and in place it is suggested for Council to support Councillor Orrell to take up the chair of Licensing and Regulatory Committee. Thank you.
Could I then ask Councillor Ashton, as leader of the council, to move formal business? Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you very much, Councillor de Gorn. Members of the council, is that all agreed? Councillor, I can't quite see. Please speak up. Councillor Crawshaw, thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'll start with a pleasantry. Congratulations on your appointment. I'm sure you will revel in the role. I'm addressing this slimmed-down council meeting as chair of the Customer and Corporate Services and Scrutiny Management Committee, the principal and statutory scrutiny committee at this authority. And I'm also speaking on behalf of the chair of Audit and Governance Committee, who is unable to attend today. As you know, annual council is usually a ceremonial occasion with allocations of motions and appointments to committee positions, a formality having been sorted out well in advance of the meeting through agreement between parties and independent councillors. Contrary to the inaccurate statement about agreement in the papers today, this hasn't happened this time around. It's a great shame then that I must interrupt today's pleasantries to raise serious concerns over the way seat allocations, motions and proportionality have been handled to date. On motions, the Greens have been allocated too many motions for the coming year, with their entitlement not having been adjusted following Councillor Dave Taylor's departure from the group. We flagged this in advance of today's meeting and have been told by the monitoring officer that the schedule was agreed 2 years ago for the 4-year term. If that is so, why then are we being asked to vote to approve this year's allocation today? The last-minute revisions to committee appointments circulated this morning and the continuous horse trading throughout today's meeting may appear to address some of the concerns that myself and Councillor Pavlovic have been raising around proportionality over the past 6 months, but they in fact leave the door wide open to seats simply being allocated disproportionately in line with the original proposal at a later date. No party has a majority on this council, so no party should have a majority on any committee, particularly not those with a statutory duty to scrutinise the decision-making of the executive on behalf of the residents of York. And allocating places with named substitutes from different parties is not a way around this. Indeed, the Local Government Housing Act 1989 highlights that it may be considered unlawful for us to allocate seats on committees in a disproportionate way when it is practicable to do otherwise. There can be no question that it is practicable. It just requires the will of this administration to adhere to their lawful duty. Because whilst it might seem like a good ruse to get around our lawful duties under the Local Government and Housing Act by arguing that we can't fill the places any other way, that is not only nonsense, it is nothing short of a cynical abuse of power. It harms the democratic accountability of this authority, and it brings this council into disrepute. In a year when we have had the shame of a public interest report, a report which highlighted failures of governance and unlawful decision-making for political expediency, it is deeply troubling that attempts have been made to gerrymander and defenestrate the principal mechanisms for scrutinising and challenging future executive decision-making. Have no lessons been learned? We are not playing some kind of game here. Strong checks and balances are the cornerstone of a healthy, functioning democracy. Once again, I feel compelled to remind members of our duties under the Nolan Principles for Standards in Public Office. In particular, openness, accountability, integrity, and leadership. Following those principles, Labour Group will be opposing this schedule of appointments and allocations of motions until the serious issues I have identified have been rectified. I urge all councillors with integrity to do the same. I would like to formally propose a deferral of this item until the issues have been resolved. If a deferral falls, then we will be voting against.
Thank you, Councillor Crawshaw. We already have a motion that has been both proposed and seconded, so I will come back to your suggestion should that be necessary. Are there any other councillors who wish to speak? I don't see any hands. Therefore, we do move to the vote. Councillors, I ask you therefore please to indicate in the usual way your approval for the motion before us. Have we counted? Thank you. Can I ask you to indicate clearly if you wish to vote against the motion? Thank you very much. Have we counted all those? And if there are any abstentions? I see one. The result of that is it's not quite the Eurovision. I imagine my vote wasn't included. Please do so. I vote for the motion.
Lord Mayor, I am advised that the outcome of the vote is 14 votes in favour, 8 against and 1 abstention.
Thank you very much. In that case, the motion is carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Council. That is agreed. There being no further business for this meeting, I declare the meeting closed. Thank you.